Hello and welcome back, and everybody, Levi here. Today I got a somewhat new commander build out of Foundations that I just put together recently. It's for Kiora, the Rising Tide. Surprisingly, another mono blue commander. I don't know what's up with me lately and mono blue, but I'm just loving some of the commanders they're putting out. So we'll go ahead and read the commander. 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Noble. It says when Kiora enters, you draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. Also has threshold, meaning whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token, and that's basically what we're building our deck around. So this one is a mirror box, mirror gallery style deck, trying to cheat the legend rule to either attack a bunch of times with our commander or hopefully clone some of the 8/8 octopus tokens and beat our opponents down with a giant board of sea monsters. So starting at the top, the first thing we need to do is get that threshold online. So I have a lot of cantrips in the deck, like Consider, 1 blue mana for an instant, Surveil 1, then you draw a card. So what this does, it basically puts 2 cards in your graveyard while not losing you anything because you're gaining a card with the card draw. So Consider is something to do on turn 1, something on turn 2. I have cards like Curate, 1 and a blue for an instant, Surveil 2, then you draw a card, very similar to Consider. I also have stuff for turn 3 like Frantic Search, 2 and a blue for an instant, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and then you untap up to 3 target lands. So what you can do is if you only have the Consider and Curate out turn 1, turn 2, and then on turn 3 you play your commander, remember that it also discards 2 cards into your graveyard. So just those 3 cards alone allows you to have your threshold online, and the very next turn you can start swinging and getting those 8/8 tokens really fast. It's possible to get your commander online pretty quickly, especially if you have a lot of these cantrips. You might even want to put more in the deck. Since we're casting a lot of instant and sorcery spells, I threw in another new one out of Foundations, Archmage of Runes, 3 blue for a 3/6 giant wizard. It says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell you draw a card. So this just helps keep your hand full. A little bit later in the game when you don't really need the cantrips as much as you just need the cards, the Archmage will definitely help you get there. Now for pretty much the meat of the deck is going to be the clones. So first thing you need to talk about is Mirror Box, 3 mana for an artifact. It says the legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control, and each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. Also, each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. So that last ability doesn't really work too well with our 8/8s that we're trying to be copying or getting lots of copies of, but still doesn't matter, they're already 8/8s. I have a lot of cards like Quasi Duplicate in the deck that are just kind of the one-off instant or sorceries that create token copies of creatures you control. So 1 blue for a sorcery, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Also has Jumpstart, which means you may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying it to the cost. Then you exile this card, so you basically get 2 uses out of it as opposed to 1. I also have repeatable ways of doing it, such as Vesuvian Duplimancy, 3 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary. So even if you don't have your Mirror Box out, you do have your Vesuvian Duplimancy out, you can still use the Quasi Duplicate, copying the 8/8 token. Obviously that one will get legend ruled out, but the one that you make from the Vesuvian Duplimancy will not be legendary, and then you can continue to copy the non-legendary one. So there's little ways around the legend rule in the deck. I like all the different ways that we can do it. Some other really good repeatable ones: Extravagant Replication, 4 blue for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of another target non-land permanent you control. So cool thing about this one is you're not like attached like an aura. There's I believe Followed Footsteps is an aura that basically does the same thing. This one's just an enchantment, so it sits around. So even if the thing dies, you still get to keep this around, and you get to choose something different every single turn. So say you don't have one of your Mirror Box effects out and you have this out, you can at least copy some other effects and still get value out of it. And then once you have that giant board of 8/8s, I threw in a card like Nanog Conversion. This card's crazy. 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Choose target creature you control. Each other creature becomes a copy of that creature until in turn, except it isn't legendary. So if you have, let's say 4 or 5 8/8 tokens, Nanog Conversion, make them all copies of your commander. They all swing out, and then you're going to be making a ton more tokens, absolutely exploding power onto the board. Lots of shenanigans you can do with the clones like these. Next up for the removal category, I threw a couple of interesting spells that work with the theme we're doing, like Abjure. 1 blue mana for an instant. It says sacrifice a blue permanent to counter target spell. So this one, you're not going to want to be just using willy-nilly. It's mainly to save your own butt. If someone goes to remove one of your important pieces, all you have to do is pay 1 blue mana, sacrifice one of your 8/8 tokens, and you can counter any spell you want. So just a little lesser known counter spell, I think, that definitely fits in a deck if you're playing, blue tokens. Another cool counter spell out of Duskmorn, Get Out, blue for an instant. You choose one, counter target creature or enchantment spell, or you return 1 or 2 target creatures and or enchantments you own to your hand. So this is either a counter spell or a spell that can save a couple of creatures or a couple of enchantments. I like to try out these kind of versatile counter counter spells, or basically just versatile spells in general that really offer a different suite of effects that you might want in your deck. Even if it's not like super great, I like to throw these in like 1 or 2 of my decks just to try them out and see how they actually play out in game. Next up, a nice removal spell, Unauthorized Exit. 1 and a blue for an instant, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, which is cool because you can hit anything, and then you surveil 1. So remember, we need to get that threshold activated for our commander to basically do anything, so having our removal spells also be tied with surveil is just another added bonus on top. And of course, we're in that sea monster somewhat tribal deck, so I threw in Whelming Wave, 2 blue for a sorcery, return all creatures to their owner's hand, except for the important one is octopuses, but it's krakens, leviathans, octopus, and serpents. So basically later in the game, if we have an entire board full of 8/8 octopuses, we pay 4 mana to Whelming Wave, pretty much bouncing everybody else's boards, and then we could swing in and hopefully kill our opponents with that. Last category I'm talking about here, the utility, just some cards that don't really fit into the other categories that really help propel our deck forward. So similar to the Whelming Wave, another way to get our 8/8s through without being blocked is with a card like Deep Channel Mentor. 5 and a blue for a 2/2 Merfolk Rogue. It says blue creatures you control are unblockable. Nice and simple. Makes sense because we want to be doing combat damage with our tokens, and we also want our commander to be attacking to create those tokens. So at any stage in the game, the Deep Channel Mentor is a really good fit. Similarly, Master of the Pearl Trident, blue for a 2/2 Merfolk. Other Merfolk creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Island Walk. So what this does is basically allow our commander to get that attack trigger every turn without having to worry about dying in combat. Basically, all you have to have is 1 opponent playing blue, which 99% of the games I feel like you're gonna have somebody playing blue because it's super popular, I feel like, in Commander, but it is absolutely essential that your commander is going to be able to attack unblocked. Then I got a couple cards that are basically like backups for our mirror box. Loyal Inventor up first, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Human Artificer with Vigilance. It says when Loyal Inventor enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, then shuffle. You either put that card into your hand if you control an assassin. If not, you put that card on top. So I do have a few changelings in the deck, so even if you don't have those out, the card still goes to the top of your library, so you're fetching out your mirror box or mirror gallery, whichever one you need. Similarly to that one, I have the Trophy Mage, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Human Wizard. When Trophy Mage enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card with CMC 3, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. So this one, unfortunately, only tutors for the mirror box. It can't get the mirror gallery, so if your mirror box, say, is already out or it got destroyed or something like that, this one's going to be a little bit more useless, but there are some other artifacts you can go and get with the Trophy Mage. Another cool one in the vein of the unblockable for your commander, I threw in a couple one-offs like Shadow Rift, a single blue mana for an instant, target creature gains shadow until end of turn, and then you draw a card. So again, with the cantrip theme, with putting cards in our graveyard to activate our threshold, you want cards like this, even if sometimes it might seem like you'd rather just have like a Prowler Sum or something like that, which I do have in the deck, but it's nice to have these instant sorceries that kind of give payoffs for our other cards like the Archmage, but also that are activating our threshold abilities. And then last but not least, somewhat of a backup for our commander, I threw Octavia Living Thesis in the deck. 8 blue for an 8/8 Elemental Octopus, fits in the octopus theme. This spell costs 8 less to cast if you have 8 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard. So again, with the theme that we're already doing, we're doing a threshold theme with instant and sorcery, so this is just a great fit in here. Also has Ward 8 and has Magecraft, so whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, target creature has base power and toughness 8/8 until end of turn. So even if we don't have our giant army of octopuses, this can at least, you know, make our commander an 8/8, so that way when we're swinging in, it's a little bit less likely to die in combat. So you can kind of get the theme of what we're doing here. It's very simple, very straightforward. We want to get our commander out, make sure we have threshold, start attacking, grow a giant army of 8/8 octopus tokens, and swing in and kill our opponents, and then clone them if you can. But that is pretty much all I've got for this Kiora the Rising Tide deck. Seems pretty fun. I personally already have a deck that's pretty similar to this. My Talion deck is a clone deck, so I won't be putting one like this together, but it is a pretty interesting one if you like a deck like this, if you want to have something that's a little bit out of the ordinary when it comes to blue. You know, blue is not the most aggro-y or attacking color. It usually likes to do more tricky things, but just throwing out a bunch of 8/8 creature tokens every turn is a pretty cool way to play a mono blue deck, in my opinion. But if you want to go ahead and check out my full list, I have the Architect link down in the description. Go ahead and give that a look. And if you made it this far into the video, go ahead and please leave me a like down below and subscribe for more of my future content. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, take care.